Welcome to Digital Transformation Bite Size. This is a series where I interview thought leaders and experts in the digital transformation, data analytics, intelligent automation, and robotic process automation industry. Paula, welcome. Would you mind telling the audience who you are and what you do, please?
Of course. Thanks so much for having me, Kieran. What a nice little piggyback to our T3. My name is Paula Carneiro. I am the Director of Business Development and Partnerships at 𝘀𝗿𝗃𝗶𝗀𝗃. So we are a full-fledged hyper-automation firm, everything from RPA through to the adjacent technologies we've all come to love discussing. And we are a full, complete suite. My responsibility is to evangelize automation to business users outside of, your typical IT folks and kind of coders getting involved in this, is really getting the business case out to the folks that are going to see a material impact in the future.
What excites you about the digital transformation space?
So that's a convoluted question. When you sent it over, I was kind of chewing on it. Because there's several components. I think because it's not emerging, it's here to stay, so that piece of it, it's job security. I know that it's not going anywhere, and the vast possibilities of what you can do with automation through, a digital transformation are really endless and getting more and more creative and just more and more robust. But also it's really satisfying being able to solve business problems that have been around since the advent of technology, using humans and technology in a different way. So what I love about this space is that it sort of has democratized technology for those of us who aren't necessarily technology inclined. I'm one of them. I'm not a coder. I'm not that, proficient, right, in technology naturally. But automation in this space is something that I can understand and I can transmit to people that I care to help, which are my clients.
What is automation and why are firms automating?
So automation, when you say what is it, it actually is far more vast than what we've termed as just RPA or some of these buzzwords, right? Automation is in its simplicity, the ability to make a technology, a machine, a software do something that a human did or could do. Automation, the advent of it sort of came from more work being created from us getting smarter with technology. For example, expense reports. When a technology came out for that, all of a sudden there was this output data that we needed to figure out what to do with in an enterprise and have it match back to a reconciliation in the org. That was a new problem created by technology. What I love about the nimbleness of automation today is that you can actually myopically right-size some of those tasks or some of those processes within an organization and really get to the bottom of how it should be done. It's process re-engineering, but being efficient along the way and getting stuff done as you're rethinking how your new way of conducting business should look.
You and I have spoken about this a couple of times on talks. Who should be leading digital transformation? Is it the CFO? Is it the CHRO? Is it the IT team? Or is it all of them? What do you think?
So we have talked about this one a few times, right? And so why not bring back our fun debate? I still firmly believe, right? And this is just goes hand in hand with all that I do and all that I evangelize, in this space, is that the executive stakeholder, that can oversee an automation program, I believe should be the finance leader. And I think that all the others that you mentioned, it's not to deter from their relevance because they're absolutely all crucial to a finance transformation or a digital transformation of any kind, right? If we're talking finance transformation, it's typically what I stick with. But if you're talking about the broader, importance of what gets a project to move, it's the alignment of all of those functions. Because again, what we're trying to do is change the way that work is done. And that means enterprise-wide. It's not just in one function or one department, although it's safe and typically best practice to start in a business unit, kind of get some excitement behind it, stakeholder alignment, get the change management kinks out of the way, because it is kind of a different take to be working alongside robots, but that is the future. So the faster we can get unscared about what's coming and what's here, and can transmit sort of the human side of what we're trying to achieve in a digital transformation. We're trying to make work better. We're trying to make work more fulfilling. Once that's the conversation, it becomes easier to see that it's really a team effort. But I'll always stick to the CFO being the one that should be in charge.
That's maybe where you and I will agree and disagree. I sort of wonder sometimes, Paula, that, you know, IT departments launch a lot of technologies, then they maybe don't quite get it right because the business objects or feels imposed upon. Then when they don't get it right, and then there's no money or no support, the CFO gets involved because all of a sudden the leader of the business says, well, this isn't making money. I don't know whether we're putting the CFO in by default, because if we go back to the basics of automation, we're talking about people, we're talking about making customer and employee experiences better. And yes, it does have to pay for itself. And therefore, I do agree that everybody needs to play their part. But I wonder if people have been taking parts because of de facto failures in other teams. How could we change any of that?
I don't think you're wrong. You know, I think that the CFO, you know, the CFO gets called in when, you know, when things are on fire and we're asking for budget for more of the digital transformation that hasn't paid anything back yet. That's typically when the CFO gets called in. And when I realized that, you know, when I stepped into the automation space, true, pure automation space, not just finance transformation or overarching things, but really focusing on the technology, you know, in a digital transformation, it became very clear that the finance leader, if they were brought in and if they had more insight and if they could feel more comfortable with all the components involved in an automation project within a digital transformation, it moves faster, it gets adopted quicker, and there aren't those questions that are asked along the way. I actually did recently, I'm a member of the CFO Leadership Council, and, you know, and I talk often, you know, with them and through them, because they really help me kind of get a pulse for how the finance leaders feel about this. And they've all heard about RPA because pilots are being done in their space, and, you know, their folks are being interviewed for process candidates to automate, and how does that connect back? So they've heard about it and they've been involved about it, but they haven't been made aware of the decisioning. And because the CFO can have typically, especially with publicly traded companies, right? If you just focus on that group of finance leaders, they have a purview much bigger and far more, you know, forward thinking than some of the IT folks and some of the people that do recurring budgets annually. So if you know that there's potential places where an automation needs to be tweaked, right? And that's getting into the weeds a little bit, or maintained or adjusted or upgraded, or this year, you know, IE is sunsetting. So lots of people have some moves to make there. It's easier when you have kind of all of those things figured out up front, or at least have the assumptions and the potential risks laid out in a way that the CFO can then match back, understand where maybe funding's coming from, understand maybe what the objectives are for human capital spend, and can really get smart about budgeting correctly. You know, the age-old problem with IT projects is that, you know, they're completely over budget, never on time. You know, the woes of, oh no, the consultants are just billing hours, and, you know, all these war stories from the 90s and ERP, you know, implementations gone awry. Well, there's that fatigue a little bit. So my move, and I've learned this from my CFO friends, is to just be really transparent about the all-in, you know, total cost of ownership, you know, and really understanding if this is a capability that you can build on the inside, or if you're going to leverage a partner, and what does that look like?
It's interesting. It sounds like the clan of CFOs there. I look back, I was having a conversation on LinkedIn earlier on, as best as you can, and IT does get blamed for a lot. And let me defend the IT industry just in general momentarily. If it wasn't for the IT industry bringing in initiatives, and they do not have a monopoly on it, then I wonder if we would be complaining about half the stuff we're complaining about. And what about all the stuff that works? I just wonder, are we lining our IT folks up for a fail? And let me explain that. A lot of people do technology because they're fantastic at technology. They're very innovative. They love solving puzzles, and technology is a particular way to solve a puzzle. But we don't teach them business skills. We don't teach them the business strategy. We don't teach them very often how to engage with business folks on an emotionally intelligent way. And I'm not saying IT people are not emotionally intelligent. I'm not saying that. So, but when it comes to then things don't work, everybody gets to go, it was the IT team's fault. And how many times have you heard people go, well, let me catch you there. I understand it's not working. You have the best of intentions in the world in front of you. You've brought this technology, RPA, and what? It's going to save me thousands of hours a year. I'll get home at night, and by the way, it's not working, and I'm just blaming you for it. Let's get the CFO involved and see what she says. are we being a little bit disingenuous to our IT colleagues?
So another loaded question by Kieran, not to be undone.
How dare you? How dare you?
Totally loaded. So let me tread lightly on this, because you're absolutely right. IT is the first to get blamed, and also, you know, at the beginning of an engagement for RPA rookies, IT is usually blamed for not having all the alignment, right? Because infrastructure considerations need to be had, and again, some of those additional, you know, costs that can creep up, you know, typically have to do with infrastructure and kind of the realm of the IT folk. Now, when we talk about a new technology that's being business led, right? And I think that's why a lot of these platforms and providers are moving more towards a cloud and explaining this as something that they can myopically control. You and I know that that's not entirely true. That there's still going to be kind of an interface with what the back IT folks have to do. But what I think is absolutely relevant is your point about upskilling. If we're talking to the finance folks, which I do day in and day out, and talk about, you need to understand RPA, you need to be at the forefront of emerging technology, you need to see where this is applicable in your organization. Hey, by the way, Mr. CFO, did you know you had robots over in HR? Because you could use them. You know, that's one conversation. I think you're absolutely right. I think enabling and empowering the IT folks has to be the next step. And I have a client engagement actually right now that it's an internal struggle between IT and the business for how to manage the cost. Because if I'm paying for the automation as the business user, right, then I should also be contributing to the budget of the IT folks that are supporting me. And I don't think that the benefits of the automation are necessarily realized one-for-one to the person that's actually footing the bill. So I think that's a really smart mode. We've been talking about kind of chargeback models lately to really kind of share, you know, in the benefits and the cost. And so it's getting creative, and that conversation is bubbling up. But I think you're right. I think just as much as we say, you know, come on, business, learn some technology, you know, can't be dinosaurs anymore, and abandon the abacus, right, to the CFO. I think similarly, we have to say, you know, hey, IT folks, you guys are the pulse of our organization. You run and make sure that we don't have cyber breaches, right? I mean, the depth and breadth of what they're responsible for was really incredible. So what can we do to empower them to not just help, right, when things go wrong, but really think through the architecture that they're the best equipped to understand of how these robots could best work in the environment. So I think you're absolutely right. I think we should be on a mission to be evangelizing the business side to the IT folks. Absolutely.
I sometimes think that, you know, IT folks should disappear into the background. And that's me as an IT folk. Yeah, because unless it's an IT business, here's the paradox, then it's not an IT business. You know, we're running businesses that deliver value in some shape, form, or other, and therefore the business should actually lead and come forward. Say what they want, say where they want to go. And an IT team, like a finance team, should be there to facilitate it using technology, just as a finance team should be there to help them deliver and make a financial gain. But I think the challenge at times is that everybody looks to the IT team for all of the innovation, all of the technology, all of the program management, and absolutely everything else, and come up with the ideas and explain technology to the business, and sometimes they're a convenient excuse. Whereas the best organizations I've been in are business-led, the IT team and other teams to come in to support them achieve the objectives. But as soon as you make it a business that's not an IT business, as soon as you run it with IT, I have seen that in action, and it's absolutely horrendous. The business doesn't get what it wants. The IT team tend to dominate. The more the business complains, the more controls that IT departments put in place, and then blame the business when the business doesn't go forward with the right control, and down in a spiral that it goes. I actually would be in the position to say that the business needs to run the business. There needs to be technology competency, but there also needs to be financial competency as well. They need to understand the customer, the market, and everything else, and how to lead. And that's more than one team. And therefore, you need the business, you need HR, you need finance, you need IT working together. And probably why they haven't worked together over the years is, you know, silos and blames and whatever else. But unless we modern up, and that is one of the tangible side effects of that horrible thing that is COVID, that everybody's come together, they've broken their silos, they've pushed decisions to the edges. Everybody has worked together because They're starting to see into each other's living rooms, and they meet each other's kids, and all of the barriers to, you know, your IT, not the human or the person that I'm dealing with on a daily basis. A lot of those are gone because they've had to go. And if there's anything positive out of COVID, I hope that actually continues. I hope the transformation continues. And that's not just the technology transformation, but I also hope it's mindset. I also hope it's skill set as well. And I look forward to organizations actually communicating and working together. Sad when they don't. And shame on all of us for not making it work, because it's easy to blame one another and blame a department or a function or whatever else. It's up to us all.
That's beautifully put. That's beautifully put, by the way. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your question, but that was really well put.
What do you think is the biggest challenge for a CFO into 2021 and 2022?
Forecasting. So, so I've had we do a poll, you know, with this group as well, and the talk was, you know, technology for the CFO in early January, and most budgets were frozen last year, and so there was kind of a surge of, you know, approved budgets that started at the beginning of January. And just as a reminder, I'm in the United States, so I'm sure, you know, UK companies work just a little bit differently, but here, you know, budgets sort of opened up a little bit more. What they're trying to solve for is the exact same things that they've been trying to solve for forever: to buy, to build, or to outsource. And the cool thing, though, is that there's a lot more options, you know, behind some of this. It's not just these out of the box solutions, you know, for expense management or, you know, getting their costs under control. Cash management and allocation is another big one. The two biggest expenses, of course, being human capital and then again, facilities. So they're really trying to right size what their fixed costs are going to be operationally going forward. You saw some announcements from Twitter, you know, some of the Silicon Valley big wigs, you know, talking about, you know, work from home forever. You know, these different models of hybrid versus not, understanding how to right size the spaces that they're in. So I think their biggest line items as far as budget goes is figuring out how the future of work is going to look. You know, what you said, are we still going to be looking into each other's living rooms and, you know, 𝘀𝗲𝗃𝗀, you know, cups back here? Or are we going to go back to the office, and what does that look like? And what are the associated costs with that as we're trying to digitally transform? So it's sort of this multi-layered, you know, kind of puzzle, as it always is for the CFO. But really it's understanding what our new fixed costs are, because that's drastically changed with human workforce kind of being cut and not understanding exactly what that go back to work's going to look like facility wise.
I find that fascinating, because I suppose for years I've advocated that anybody can work from anywhere. And now it's had to be the case. And if you imagine you're in a contact center 14 months ago, you absolutely got jumped upon when you had your mobile phone in place. You might have needed to make a call to your family or whatever else. Now roll on 6 months, 12 months, and the CFO and the CEO are absolutely delighted if you're somehow managing to take calls at any time of day. I think that's forced a level of trust and a level of decision making, whether people have liked it or not. And I definitely think people see it's working. The one thing I do worry about, Paula, though, is if we look at everything from a financial lens, and I know finances are important, they're particularly important in the last 12 months, I just worry that we won't innovate. I know the counter argument to that is, well, we'll innovate doing the right things. But how many business plans or ideas start out with, you know, this is going to get $1 million. It's signed off by a CFO and the CEO. It's put in the books and everybody's a winner. You know, I worry we just will kill innovation if everything that we do has to result in an immediate or advanced dollar sign. I think innovation would stop in so many instances. What do you think?
So that's an interesting way to look at it. I definitely think you have to put context behind numbers. You know, I'm a firm believer in storytelling. I think that the numbers anchor the points and the milestones and help you kind of directionally understand that you're going to the right place. But you're right. A lot of things come up, leaders change, you know, initiatives fall, especially these 3, 4, 5 year engagements, you know, transformations that take place. It goes back to kind of what our 𝘀𝗿𝗏𝗏𝗏's mission is too, that we kind of thought through at the end of last year. It was a hard year for everybody, but really thinking about restoring humanity to automation. So it's not just about, it's not just about the numbers or finding the efficiency gains or the hours back. That's all beautiful. And that's, you know, that's the intention, right? That's where we start. But contextually, it's about empowering the workforce. It's about, you know, welcoming the millennials and the Gen Xers and the Gen LMNOPs that are going to follow to be able to embrace and understand and feel comfortable in this digital environment, right? And if we haven't innovated, if organizations haven't innovated, they're doing themselves a disservice for getting the best talent. And as we know how organizations tick, how they make moves, it's about the people that are there, not just the technology. So from multiple angles, you have to look at the numbers, you have to report to the streets, you have to report to your stakeholders, absolutely. But I think numbers are kind of the drumbeat behind the bigger story. And really the context, I think, is important. Otherwise, if they're not immersed in it, how are they going to even come up with creative new ideas, right? So I think you're absolutely right. You can't thwart innovation by just sticking to the numbers. But it's also interesting to think about the fact that the numbers sort of indicate where innovation should go. So I see them more as kind of a trail, right? We're directionally winning. Maybe we should uncover that more. But it's not hard and fast. Absolutely.
I love your phrase there, the drumbeat of the numbers. Spoken like a true CFO person, numbers game. I have to say, since I became confident and competent in numbers, it's actually made my decision making that little bit more successful. I would love to see when folks are onboarding, they get financial training. And I think every manager, not just IT, because I want to make sure we're not fixated and concentrating on them alone. I think everyone should understand how numbers work in an organization, because I think that would be one of the things that would transform organizations really, really dramatically. Where do you see digital transformation going in the next couple of years?
Interesting. I don't remember that question coming up in our.
I don't care. I'm not asking it anyway.
I'm not asking anymore. It's not off script. Done. Okay. So digital transformation. Where do I think it's going in the next couple of years? I think it's leveling out as not a hype, right? And as a business critical initiative. Again, for the reasons that I expressed, the most expensive thing is human capital. You're not going to get the best talent if you're not innovative. Nobody's going to come to the table and say, sure, I'll pivot my way, to the close. You're just not, that's just not going to be acceptable anymore. So I think more and more these level setting of skills are going to be seen. I think the job descriptions are going to change drastically. I think business units, as a result, are going to begin to converge, maybe less siloing and more understanding that we are actually connected by systems. So maybe we should get our people to talk to, and I think that digital transformation is just going to give everybody a little bit more comfort. Whereas, 5-10 years ago, we were talking about it and it was very uncomfortable and it was scary and it represented taking my job. And, you had to be very delicate about who you approach to talk to about this. Right. And now I think, with kind of this evangelization, doing things like this, just talking about it, two humans that are in this space, just saying, yeah, it's hard, yeah, it can move mountains. Yeah, you could get, a lot more out of it if you did it this way. Right. And just, humanizing this conversation. I think that's what we're going to see more of, and more collaboration and more lessons learned. And like you said, COVID forced us to kind of go into each other's living rooms and share the wealth. I've never seen more competitors collaborating, which is a very cool thing to see. It shows that there's plenty for everybody. There's a lot to go. We've only just scratched the surface if you look at market share. So the sky's the limit. And I think it's just getting more tangible for the everyday person below the VP director level. It's becoming a little bit more digestible to say that robots are coming, and so I think that's where we're headed, is just continuing to normalize what's already here for most of the Fortune 500.
Yeah, I wonder if it's one of those, I always look for the best in things, Paula. So I wonder if it's one of those beautiful things about COVID, that firms cared about their people again, and we cared about each other again, if that makes sense. Because we got into each other's living room, because everyone was worried about everyone else, we've used the technology to humanize work, and we've used the technology to humanize one another. And I do hope we keep this human aspect of the transformation that's happened over the last 12 months. I've waited years and years and years for technology to help transform organizations. And even better still, by that I mean customers' experience and employees' lives. Over the last 12 months, it has. It's no longer, FaceTimes for kids on a phone. It's something that we can do to actually create community in this space. And I know you and I and lots of others are connected in a wonderful community that wouldn't have been possible otherwise. I hope we retain the essence of that going forward over the next 12 months. Paula, thank you so much today for joining Digital Transformation Bite Size. I wish you and Wonderbots every success in the future. For everyone else, thank you for listening in. Be good, stay safe, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Paula, welcome to Digital Transformation Bite Size. This is a series where I introduce, oh no, because I interview.
You don't interview? You don't introduce? You're not introducing?
No,
me?
I don't. I don't introduce. Oh. Don't care enough to do that. Right. Let's give it a go.
Maybe I need my glasses so I can keep up with
Paula,
my notes.
Sorry, I know you have to edit this. I'm really sorry. It's taking so damn long. That's to my wife.
Sure.
To you. Alrighty.
Yes, no, two Paulas in this show.
Very
okay.
confusing. Alrighty.
All right.
We should do the outtakes. Right. We're doing this.
All right.
That's what happens when I don't wear a blue jumper.
I know. I think you're off your game.
Yeah, blue jumper it is. Distracting. Welcome to Digital Transformation Bite Size. This is a series where I interview experts and thought leading. Stop. Hold on. I'm not going to.
And this is my first time.
I know. This has never happened before.